Did I really switch from Nikon to Canon to Sony back to Nikon? Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome back, everyone. My name is Eric Marks with FindingMiddleEarth.com, and I'm pleased to say that my website will finally be back up in just a couple of days. It's taken a little longer than expected, but some of the back-end polishing that I've been doing has just kind of gotten out of hand, and it was a lot of work mixed in with my regular photography jobs and everything, so almost done. I did get my servers upgraded since just my site traffic grew so much, so everything is upgraded on the back end already. My servers are private solid state servers now, so everything should be nice and fast and snappy for everybody when it goes back online. I will make a video when it goes back online, and I'll give you guys kind of the briefest of tours of the new website. But yeah, so I'm happy to say that it'll be back up over the weekend, so that will be awesome. Okay, so today I'm talking about a video, or not talking about a video, I'm making a video that is covering this question that I get asked all the time, which is, Eric, did you really switch camera brands this many times from Nikon to Canon to Sony? And if you go back on my YouTube channel and you look at some of my videos, you'll see that I've done landscape photography tutorials with Canon cameras, and I've done them with Sony cameras. And I have, I think I have an unboxing video where I unboxed the Sony a7R Mark II. And so I can understand why it's kind of confusing. So I wanted to make this video because I get that question quite often. So let me kind of start. I'm not going to go into like the camera, what I thought about the cameras or the reviews on the cameras or anything, but I will tell you how I got to this point and where I started. So let me start by saying I've never switched camera brands. Just to get that out of the way, that way you don't have to fast forward the video and try to find the point where I say if I switched. I never switched. I've been on Nikon since day one. I started out with a Nikon D70, I believe it was. And then from there I went to the D80, the D90, and then the D300, and so on and so forth. And now I have the Nikon D810 and a Nikon D4. Started off with Nikon, okay. I was been very happy with Nikon for years and years. Round about the year 2013, it was the end of 2013, I was approached by a wedding photographer that was in my area, and he said, Eric, I know that you're really good at shooting portraits and this stuff, but you love shooting landscapes. And would you want to do a wedding photography partnership with me for the year of 2014? And if you like it, we can keep going. And so I'd never really thought about being a professional wedding photographer. I had shot weddings for friends that have asked me, and clients have found me before and asked me, but I've never like marketed myself as a wedding photographer. I considered myself a good wedding photographer. I like shooting people and shooting portraits. It's fun. It's just not as fun to me as shooting landscapes and being outdoors. So I thought, maybe, I'll think about it. And then he said, well, I've got the entire year of 2014 booked solid. And so, of course, I said, well, if you already have it booked solid and you're looking for a partner, let's do it. So went into business with this guy, shot the first couple of weddings of 2014 with him with my Nikon gear, okay? And I started noticing in those first few events that I wasn't happy with how the skin tones of the bride and the groom and all these people were being portrayed. I found myself having to do a lot of extra work in Lightroom to color correct everything. And when you're doing wedding photography, if you're a wedding photographer out there, you know that when you're doing wedding photography, you don't spend a ton of time on each photo getting everything post-processed perfect. You just do kind of your basic stuff, your contrast, your highlights, your shadows, and then if it's the bride, of course, you do skin softening and all those kinds of things. But just on the regular photos, you don't do a whole lot of work because you can't. You're shooting 2,000 or 3,000 photos. So you just can't do it. You'd never make any money if you spent 2 hours on every photo. So I thought there's got to be a way. So the very next wedding, I thought, okay, I'm gonna do a custom Kelvin value, a custom white balance on my camera for every room. And so I tried that. Still, it was better, but skin tones weren't great. And so I asked this guy, I said, can you send me some of your raw files? The guy that I was shooting with, I just want to look at him because he shot Canon and I was shooting Nikon. And so he gave me some of his Canon files, which he was shooting with a 5D Mark III and a 1DX, I believe, at the time. And his skin tones were like perfect. And it was just the raw file. And I was saying, okay, this is crazy. So I did research, and because I'd never really known a ton about Canon, I've always been a Nikon guy. And so apparently it's just, Canon produces really good color when it comes to skin tones in really tricky lighting situations. Now, of course, Nikon has always been the leader in shadow detail and dynamic range, which I know, which is why I love Nikon, and I've always been with Nikon because I'm primarily a landscape and architecture photographer. So I thought, okay, I've always wanted to have like a secondary photography kit so that I could use it, just to experiment with other brands. And so I thought there's no better time than to invest in this second kit, for wedding photography, while I actually have an excuse to invest in it, right? Because we were making good money. We had a whole year booked. So I bought a Canon kit. I bought a Canon 5D Mark III, a Canon 5D Mark II as a backup body, and then about 5 Canon L lenses. And I had a pretty good kit going. So I took my new Canon kit to the very next wedding, and boom, it clicked. All the skin tones were great. All the tricky lighting situations with the disco balls and the crazy dance halls and all this insane DJ lighting, it handled it like a champ. It was great. So I was very happy with it. So anyway, long story short, I shot the Canon stuff for all my weddings for that whole year, okay? At the end of 2014, or at least nearing the end of 2014, the guy wanted to know if I wanted to just permanently make this, a contractual agreement where we just had this wedding business going. And I didn't want to do it. It was nothing against him. We're still friends and we talk. It's just I didn't want to do wedding photography. I didn't have fun doing it as opposed to a landscape photography. My point is, I didn't want to do it as a career. Weddings are fun to shoot every once in a while, but as a career, I didn't like it. I didn't want to work insane hours every single weekend and feel like I was, just being beat to death all the time with these insane hours, and then always just slaving over my computer, editing all these files all the time. Wasn't very fun to me. And it was hard for me on the editing end because I'm a perfectionist as a landscape shooter. I like to make everything look perfect. So I was spending too much time on the photos making them look like fine art. And you can't do that in wedding photography. So at the end of that year, I thought, okay, well, made good money doing weddings. Should I just sell my Canon kit and go back to just Nikon? Or should I keep this secondary kit going on for just experimental purposes? Well, I decided to try out the Canon kit for landscape photography. I said, you know what? I still have my Nikon gear. Maybe I can just add this in and just have this ultimate landscape kit. Well, Canon's dynamic range sucks, so did not like that. It was not good at all for landscape photography for what I'm used to. I'm not saying you can't take good landscape photos with Canon cameras. I'm just saying I was spoiled because I have these great Sony Nikon sensors. Because Sony makes Nikon sensors. So, sold all my Canon stuff. I had about 10 grand plus invested into my Canon kit. I sold it all, and I thought this is probably the time where I should invest in a mirrorless camera kit, because mirrorless cameras were like on the rage at the end of 2014. Like Sony was hardcore pushing their full frame line, their Sony A7, A7R, the A7 II had like just come out. So I thought, this whole mirrorless thing is taking the world by storm right now. Why not try it as a secondary kit just to see, what it's all about? I still had all my Nikon DSLRs. I never traded them or did anything. I sold them. I still had them. I had this secondary kit. So I bought tons of Sony stuff. I bought a Sony A7R, a Sony A7 Mark II, and then when the Sony A7R Mark II came out, I bought that. So I had 3 full-frame Sony bodies, and I had a bunch of Sony lenses. And I bought it because me and my wife spent a week in Disney World on a vacation, and I thought there's no better time to try out these smaller mirrorless cameras than at a theme park where you want light stuff to carry around. And I really enjoyed having the Sony stuff. I really did. Looking back, I probably wish I should have gone Fuji, because I really love the files that come out of the X-T1, but I like resolution too. So I like the fact that I had 42 megapixels in the A7R II, and the dynamic range of the A7R II was really, really comparable to my D810. So shot with Sony for a while, and then when it came down to it, when I actually started using the Sony stuff in the field, like on location, all the hardcore location work that I do with my Nikon stuff, like around waterfalls and mist and rainy situations, like I'll shoot in the pouring rain with my Nikon D810, and just not even think twice about it. But when I was out there with the Sony stuff, it just didn't seem, I don't know, I wasn't comfortable with it. And then any kind of long exposures with the Sony stuff, it took forever to process the file and show me the preview. And I had long exposure noise reduction turned off. I couldn't figure out why the Sony software was just so slow. I just felt like I was always waiting on it to do something versus not having to wait on my Nikon stuff. So at that time I was like, okay, well, you know, I've experimented with the Sony now for months. It was about 6 months. I think I'm just going to hold off until Photokina, which is now this year. It's this month, actually. Photokina is in, I think, like 10 days. So I sold all my Sony stuff, so all that, and now I'm just left with this pile of money that I had with this secondary camera kit, waiting to buy the next best thing out there as another experimental kit. However, if Nikon comes out with the D810 successor at Photokina, like I hope they will, then I'm not going to do the secondary camera kit. I'm going to sink all my money into this new Nikon thing and probably buy 2 of them. I'm super excited about that, by the way. But Sony might impress me as well. I'm really looking forward to see if Sony releases the new Sony A9 or A7R Mark III, whatever it might be called. And basically, I wanted to have my options open for this year's Photokina because this is probably going to be one of the biggest moves in technology that we've seen at a Photokina, because mirrorless technology keeps getting better and better. And I think Sony and all these other mirrorless companies are starting to pick up on what the users are complaining about. And so I'm hoping they're going to introduce solutions for a lot of those things in their next camera models. So anyway, right now I just have my Nikon stuff. I don't have a secondary camera kit at the moment. I'm just waiting to invest into another camera body by Nikon or Sony, or something. I'm looking into Fuji as well, but I like having a secondary kit to experiment with. This is my point. I encourage you guys to do the same if you're looking to to see if something else might work better for your workflow. It's not a bad thing to consider switching camera brands. My point is, don't do it without really putting the other camera brand through its paces. I would never just sell all my Nikon stuff and go Sony without really extensively putting it through its paces. So I tried the Canon stuff for a year. I tried the Sony stuff for 6 months. And at the end of the day, it didn't make sense for me to keep it and for it to actually fit into my workflow and replace my Nikon stuff. Never ever sell off your primary kit if your secondary kit isn't good enough to replace it. That's my point. That's why I have a secondary kit, or that's why I created one to begin with, because I wanted to see if I could ever find a solution that would replace my heavy DSLR system. Because I'm not opposed to mirrorless cameras. I'm just waiting until the technology gets to the point where it makes sense to actually make the switch. So I'm hoping at Photokina 2016 we're going to see a lot of cool new stuff. I'm really getting excited about it, actually. The Apple just had their event where they released the iPhone 7 and the Apple Watch. I'm super jazzed about that. That's going to be really cool. The iPhone 7 is going to be a huge jump in terms of photography, so that's cool. But I have my hopes up for Photokina. I just cannot wait. So, of course, when Photokina happens and they're releasing their stuff, I'll make videos about my first thoughts and my first impressions about all this stuff. But until then, we'll all just have to wait and see what happens. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video to kind of clear that up for all of you guys. I've never switched camera brands just through a series of unfortunate, or not unfortunate events. That's a movie, a series of unfortunate events. Through a series of events, I created a secondary camera kit and got Canon and Sony, and now I'm back to just Nikon. And I'm just waiting to see what else I'm going to use for my secondary kit. I'm hoping it's going to be the Nikon D850 or something insane at by Sony at this year's Photokina event. So we'll just have to wait and see. But until the next video, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next one. If you would like to stay up to date on all of my latest photography videos and adventures, click the big subscribe button below. And if you would like to find out more about me and how to become a great photographer, visit my website at findingmiddleearth.com.